Hello, time to talk about emergency preparedness. And today's topic is about rotating your long-term storage. And we have some great topics and things to think about for that. Some updates from last time. Last time I recorded this, you probably saw a pantry looking like this. And with help of the elders and putting away some boxes, it looks more like this. That's some progress. Also, my freezer outside was turning into an iceberg, and I managed to defrost it, and it looks more like this. So good news on all those fronts. We have a kitchen now that is functional, and so it's a great time to talk about what we do with some of our long-term storage items to prepare edible food for our families. I've had neighbors ask about why I have so many paint cans in my garage, and I do have some of various colors here. And things like mashed potatoes, rice, sugar, a lot of things that you already know how to use and use in everyday life. A couple of things that require a little more effort and thing to think about. I guess I do have one paint can here, but there's a trend in grocery stores. You can order these cans from Melius Cannery now. You used to be able to go there in person, but you notice here that we have a bucket that says hard white wheat, and I actually bought that, I believe, at Walmart. So you're seeing more of these long-term storage items available in regular old grocery stores because this is getting kind of trendy to do these sort of things. And after some time, you'll have accumulated number of things. Among them, you'll have wheat and beans. When it comes to rotating some of these supplies, there's a couple of things you're going to need. Something like red wheat. First thing you're going to need is a can opener. And if you're doing grain, you'll need some way of grinding that grain into something called flour. Maybe a place to store the flour, such as this Gamma Seal container. And then you're going to have some way of making that into bread or other items that your family can consume. And in this case, we have a KitchenAid mixer. Back in the pioneer days, our pioneer ancestors would use their hands to actually knead dough and make it into bread. And that's still a possibility, but lots of you have a mixer like this. It's also possible to use a bread maker, and a bread maker can do the kneading and mixing for you. If you're planning on just making one loaf at a time, it is a practical option. Another thing that's helpful with grain is to have some of this gluten, and gluten is, if this won't work if you're gluten free, but because whole grain flour, freshly ground, isn't going to have as much natural gluten as white flour, this is usually helpful to put into recipes. I would note that having something like this is not mandatory. You can knead by hand. You could also do what has become kind of all the rage during the pandemic days and work on some no-knead bread. Do you substitute patience for perseverance in creating kneaded bread? One thing you're going to need for this is yeast. And now that my fridge is actually back in my kitchen, this is the last time, I can show you that I keep yeast in the refrigerator, and that is highly advised for keeping yeast in a fresh state. We have another packet of yeast in the freezer. Now, grains can compose a lot of your food storage, but another thing you'll run into at times is beans. And these beans are dry. They're not going to be able to just take them out of a can and start cooking with them as you would from canned beans from a store. Generally, you're going to boil them first and let them sit overnight in hot water so they can be pre-soaked, drain them, and then you can use them on a recipe. If you have an electric pressure cooker, such as the Instant Pot here featured here, You can often speed up the process and do what they call a quick soak with the beans and cook them in one process or in 2 cycles and include them in your favorite recipes right away. Instant Pot has also been helpful for me using short-term storage and just in general being good for a set and forget type meal preparation. It is a little bit like a crock pot, although it's several times faster. You're done in an hour instead of 6 hours. You'll see a lot of recipes on the internet that actually say Instant Pot. Now, Instant Pot is just a brand of electric pressure cooker, and if you happen to have an electric programmable pressure cooker of your own, you can use all those recipes that say Instant Pot and find a lot of good things. Even freezer meals that have been customized for the Instant Pot have been a good thing for my family when we've done that. Another thing to consider, and this is applicable for both beans and grain, and as well as other various seeds, is sprouting things. And if you were actually living off your long-term supply for some time, you might be short on things like fresh vegetables. Sprouts would be one way to incorporate some of that into your diet. Basic procedure is you're going to put something in here to soak for about 6 to 8 hours, and then you're going to rinse it every day, probably twice a day, until you get the results that you want, which will depend on it. Grains will usually be, a day or two is all you would need to grow a few tails on grains. Beans might be longer. In this case, we're looking at a case of mung beans, and they were best about 7 days, and they have a lot of growth potential in them. Your goal is to get something that looks like this. Mung beans are what's used for sprouts when you go to a stir fry at a Japanese kitchen or Chinese buffet. You're not going to get your sprouts to look quite as good as they are because they have specialized lights, gas, and equipment for doing that. But you can get something that looks like this using your stir fry, your scrambled eggs, or various other ways. And that's a great experience. I'm going to be recommending this to our elders quorum to try out some of these things. So you want to see what they come up with. Send in some of your pictures and comment below on how the experience went for you. So I hope this helped you to kind of think about what you can do to rotate your long-term storage and how that can help you be better prepared and supplement your 3-month supply. And thanks for listening today. And be prepared. If you like this video, be sure and like, subscribe, and leave some comments about what you're doing to use up your long-term storage. That would be great. Thanks.